Greetings, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on today's session of Ask Aaron. My name is Aaron Holm. I'm the manager of consumer engagement for Ottobock North America and the host of Ask Aaron. I am really excited today to talk with our guest, Ezra Frech. Ezra was just named a member of the 2021 US Paralympic team and will be competing in Tokyo in a matter of weeks. Ezra, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, a little background for listeners and viewers. Ezra was born with a congenital limb differences in his left hand and his left leg, but he's never thought of himself as disabled. At the age of 11 months, Ezra was ready to get moving, something that would serve him well in his future career as an athlete, and was fit with his first prostheses. He's been unstoppable ever since. At a young age, Ezra underwent surgery that allowed Ezra's limb to fit better in a prosthesis, taking his physical abilities to the next level. He played several sports in high school and started competing in track and field in events in 2013, holds 9 national track and field records in the under 11 T42 classification for 60, 100, 200, 400 shot put, discus, javelin, high jump, and long jump. Ezra's determination, talent, and passion fueled the creation of Angel City Games, which we'll talk about today, a multi-sport competition for physically disabled children, adults, wounded warriors, and elite athletes. The inaugural games were held in 2015 and has been going strong ever since. And also joining me today is my colleague at Ottobock, Brian Frasure. Brian, you out there? Welcome.
Thanks, Aaron. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Brian is a former Paralympian, born with a natural gift in athletics and running. Brian was a promising freshman runner at the University of North Carolina in 1992 when a train accident led to Brian's left leg being amputated below the knee. He has spent the last 18 years working with prosthetic manufacturers and advanced bionic technology, providing input to R&D teams, fine-tuning the devices in the marketplace. He is currently Senior Manager, Professional Clinical Services at Ottobock. His unique perspective and expertise allows him to help regain their freedom of movement, activities of daily living, as well as their fitness goals. Brian's athletic career includes 15 years as a Paralympic sprinter. He racked up 55 medals, 32 gold, and 5 world records. Wow. And again, my name is Aaron Holm, and I like to golf. But you guys, pretty impressive bios there. I think I need a little drink of water after covering all that.
My bio is nothing compared to Brian, so don't even put me in the same league.
But Ezra, you're just starting. You got a lot of years and a lot of Paralympics to catch up, and I think don't undersell yourself.
Thank you.
At 16 years old, Ezra, I'm very impressed. And as we were talking about before this, you've got that radio voice too. So I think you're going to help out on the announcing side as well when you're not competing. But thanks again, both of you guys, for joining us today. And Ezra, let's start out with you, but let's go way back 13 years ago, 3 years old. As I mentioned in your bio, you were born with a limb deficiency, underwent surgeries beginning at 2 or 3 years old?
Yeah, I was about 2.5 when I had the big surgery where I finally gained a stump and I gained 2 fingers on my left hand. That surgery was pretty crucial to me, even being able to walk, play sports, do anything that I've been able to do. Because on the prosthetic side, a stump's so much easier to fit into a prosthetic leg, so much easier to control, to move around with. And then on the hand side, I went from having 1 finger, everything I was holding was like against my chest, and I got a 2nd finger. I could pick things up. I could hold my toys. So totally changed my hand functionality, totally changed my functionality in general as a little kid. So.
Oh, wow. Very cool. And really what's really neat, I think, about this conversation here, Ezra, and seeing you mixing it up with the kids at Angel City Games and other competitions. We get a lot of calls from parents born with limb difference, or even parents expecting that their unborn has been diagnosed with a deficiency, quite often a hemimelia, whether tibia, fibula. We are aware of the uncertainties that come with limb loss and limb difference, but for parents, it's obviously trifold. So for the parents out there to see your level of confidence, your level of ability at the age of 16 is invaluable. So thank you for that and sharing your story with us, and certainly kudos to your parents. I'm assuming your grades are phenomenal in school, but we don't have to get into that.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the early days a little bit. Activities, being a kid with a disability. You told me yesterday that you grew up in a kind of a neighborhood of not as much parents, but an older population. So you didn't have that neighborhood kids, that camaraderie, things like that. When what was that like, going to school as that, kid with maybe a limb difference and standing out a little bit? Yeah,
for sure. I definitely didn't have like neighbors that I never had like that neighbor or friend group like in the neighbor. I was not like, I said earlier, I lived around like grandparents and older people, and like, so I was not really around like that group of like kids. But when I went to school, I quickly found a friend group, found kids who I related with, and mostly the way I became friends with them was through sports, because we played sports together, and I played basketball with them, soccer, football, whatever it was. And so sports was like this median for me to be able to hang out with kids, relate to kids, find friends. And then ultimately I'm friends with some of the same kids that I've been friends with since kindergarten and since I first met them. And of course, there's so many tough periods and so many times when I was younger, I was like, why am I the only kid in my school with one leg? Why this? Why me? Right. And then as I got older, I just sort of learned to accept the fact that I can't really change my disability. There's nothing I can do about it. So I just sort of realized, might as well make the most out of my life. Might as well have a good time. Might as well not stress about what other people are thinking if I have no control over it. So once I made that flip, it became a lot easier for me to sort of accept myself in these school settings and these, around the campus and stuff like that, not be so self-conscious all the time. But it was great because I was able to find a really amazing friend group because I played sports with them and because that's how I connected with those athletes and those kids.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that neighborhood of yours, but you did have a sport court, right? So you probably drew some kids into your backyard for competitive football or basketball games and things like that.
Yeah, I played basketball with my friends and stuff like that. Mostly at school and people's houses. But it's funny you said like a neighborhood. Like I never had that. I was like, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, running around with the kids. That's typically I remember that as a kid is just, you couldn't wait to get outside and play the games, the football, the baseball, the soccer, basketball, whatever was going on that day. And not having that, you had to get out and seek that. And you probably had to wait till probably elementary school or something to get with other kids that was basically pulling you into the sports and activities and things like that. Where do you think you got your very competitive kid, your very competitive athlete? Where do you think you got your competition from? Is that playground, that recess stuff, or?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think there's definitely a good chance that I got my competitive aspect from recess, from playing with my friends. But as well, I think it stems from the fact that I was always the underdog in anything that I did, whether it was recess basketball or club basketball or even making the US team, whatever it was. I was always the underdog. I always had this chip on my shoulder. So with that chip on my shoulder growing up, I always felt the need to beat these guys. I felt like I had to win to show them like, all right, you got beat by the kid with one leg. Like, what's up now? So if I had that type of mentality, it pushed me and made me try even harder and have that like competitive edge because I always had that chip on my shoulder. And so with that, I think that's where my competitive drive and my competitiveness sort of stemmed from. And then obviously just carried on through the rest of my life.
And your sport, you said at an early age, has been basketball. That's your.
That was my That was my favorite sport growing up, basketball, 100%.
You probably broke some equipment growing up, some prosthetics, huh?
Plenty of equipment. It was a celebration every time I walked into the prosthetist office with a new broken foot or broken knee or whatever it was. Everyone's like cheering. And as a little kid, it was like the coolest thing. I was so excited when I broke something to go show everyone. But yeah, tons of breaking parts.
Yeah, they probably weren't at Hanger. They probably weren't surprised to see you come in the office with two pieces of a running blade or something.
Yeah, plenty of times. Plenty of times.
I probably had a stock for you. It's full of backup equipment, like a pit stop over there, I'm sure.
Yeah, even to this day, we have backup equipment and everything.
Fabulous. And then getting into competition, how did that start? Did your parents enroll you kind of in the local track and field events and things like that, or did you start traveling right away to the Endeavor Games and to Desert Challenge, or how did you get into competing against other kids?
Right away, my dad took me to the Endeavor Games. So he took me straight across the country. There was because my dad didn't want me to come out here and compete against other able-bodied kids at a track meet. I would get smoked, by these two-legged able-bodied kids. And it would that was, and also he wanted me to meet the community. He wanted me to see other athletes like myself come out and compete against other kids who are also missing a leg or same age, same disability. That's what he wanted. He wanted me to get that sense of community. So he took me out to the Endeavor Games for the first time for my first track meet. And that's where I competed for the first time. So that's where track took off.
So how old do you think you were at that first track meet?
I was 8 years old. So
okay,
8 years ago, half of my life. That was the halfway point of my life so far.
I mean, 8 years ago, I remember some things 8 years ago. Do you remember that day, that traveling out there, the nerves? Are we excited or?
It's funny. I don't remember it very well because we did a lot of those little track meets after that. I do remember. I remember briefly in long jump, I jumped and I got a national record for the U11 age group. And I was so excited. And then every jump that I took, the next one went a little bit farther because I was just understanding the form, understanding what I had to do. So I broke it six times. Every single jump was a little bit farther. And so that was the one thing I do remember about that competition. Cause when you're good at something, it sparks your interest a little bit more. You're like, oh wow, this is actually really fun. So that's part of the reason that I liked it so much.
Well, I would imagine at 8 years old, Ezra, you didn't even realize you were supposed to be nervous for that competition.
I definitely didn't. I wasn't probably nervous at all. But what I was upset about was my dad would sign me up for every single event that was available for me. 60, 100, 200, 400, long jump, high jump, discus, javelin. That's why shot put. That's why when Aaron was reading the national records in all the events, it was from 9 events when I was 8 through 11 years old, because my dad would say, for coming all the way out here, you better do every single event. So I was like, all right.
We're getting our money and our time's worth.
Exactly.
You're doing everything. And at that age, you could do everything. That's great. Well, a really cool story came out of your travels and taking on those road trips, or the traveling to different markets, the Endeavor, probably junior nationals, Desert Challenge in Arizona. But at one point, I think you were 9 years old. You had a pretty big idea that you talked to your dad about.
Yeah, it was at the Endeavor Games. It was at that very first track meet. We were sitting at the long jump pit, and my dad looked around and he was like, why did we come to Tornado Alley in tornado season to run, jump, and throw stuff? It sort of hit him. He was like, why did I take him here? There should be this in Los Angeles. There should be this tight-knit community in Los Angeles. The people, the weather, the facilities. Why is this not happening? And so that was when the idea first began for this nonprofit that would provide sports for people with physical disabilities and provide that sense of community that we found at the Endeavor Games in Los Angeles, because it was really lacking. So my dad ran with the idea. 2015, we had our first Angel City Games. And then ever since then, we've provided year-round sports programming for people with physical disabilities. And it's all stemmed from that one moment at the track when it was this light bulb went off and he was like, why is this not in Los Angeles? And ever since then, we've helped serve, the community within Los Angeles, because it's 10% of the US population has a physical disability. This should be huge. There shouldn't be 50 athletes on the track. There should be 500. There should be 700. And so with that mentality and those numbers and the energy and ultimately, the purpose that we had just now realized, we made it happen. And then now, what is it? Since 2015, 6 years later, it's grown even bigger and bigger, and we're serving thousands of athletes. And one day it will become the largest sports competition in the world, regardless of disability. The Paralympics is what, 3,000 athletes? That's only the elite. Imagine if we could get 10,000, 15,000 athletes out there. So that's where we hope it goes one day. But, it's really cool to provide that community that I saw when I went to the Endeavor Games. And now we're getting to provide that here in Los Angeles on even a bigger scale than it was at the Endeavor Games, and hopefully more people. And so.
Absolutely. And the momentum is incredible. I attended the first games, the first Angel City Games, and Ottobock has been sponsoring since day one. And just seeing that grow is exciting. But what was really cool is seeing athletes like you. I mean, you were 10 years old, the first one I went to, and there's a lot of other kids that were even younger than you that we're seeing now more on a national scale. And they really got their start at the games in LA. So what a cool thing to bring home to your backyard, and for you and Dad to be a mentor for all these young athletes, and that you're really just building up an incredible community.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you. August 20th, big day.
Yeah, pretty big day. That's the day I fly out for Tokyo.
That's awesome. You're heading to Tokyo after recently being named to the Team USA, and I think Brian's going to talk to you a little bit about some of the competition that you're going to be competing in, and what to look forward to.
Yeah, Ezra. So first of all, just again, congratulations on making your first Paralympic team. And
thank you.
One of the first questions I have to ask you is just at 60. So I was 23 at my first Paralympics. You're 16. What does it feel like as a 16-year-old? And when honestly, maybe we take a step back. When did you first set your sights on making a U.S. team for the Paralympics?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was actually in the other room over there when I watched Rio. I watched Rio 2016 Paralympics, and I saw lots of guys that I had seen around. I'd seen at different competitions I was friends with. They sort of inspired me, the elite guys, all these competitions. I saw them at the Paralympics on the big screen, and I was like, my eyes were like, what? Like, this is the coolest thing ever. And I'd known what the Paralympics were, and it was like a distant dream of mine for a while. When I was 11 years old watching the games, I was like, oh, I could do this. I can make this happen in Tokyo. So I told my parents at 11 years old, I said, I'm going to make the Tokyo Paralympic team. And they were like, all right, good luck. What are your parents aren't going to just shoot down their kids' dreams, but it was highly unlikely that I'd do that at 15 because I was 11 when I was saying that. And then, I trained really hard. I trained set up boxes outside in my backyard, getting up at 6 a.m. and just doing crazy workouts that I knew nothing about because I didn't even have a coach at the time. And then ultimately, fast forward 5 years, and I made the team, and it finally happened. This thing that I put out in the universe, ended up becoming a reality. And so, granted, there was so many other factors, and I got an amazing coach, and we put together an amazing training plan, and everything worked out correctly. But I'm the same 11-year-old kid that had this dream. It's just a reality now. And so that's what's really cool for me, is to sort of be now and look back and wow, that 11-year-old kid wanted to be there. I leave in 3 weeks. So it's been really cool.
That's amazing. And you bring up a really interesting point and topic about seeing some of the other athletes on the big screen. I know that for me, I was, as Aaron said before, I was 19 when I lost my limb. I had a hard time. I really struggled with convincing myself to get back involved at a high level of competition after my amputation. My first prosthetist drugged me kicking and screaming to an amputee running clinic in Dallas, Texas, in the early 90s. And there I met Dennis Oler and Todd Schaffhauser, who were some of maybe you recognize these names, maybe you don't, but back then they were the top sprinters for amputees for above knee and below knee. And Dennis Oler just really reached out to me, took me under his wing. I didn't have a coach at the time, just like you mentioned. I was kind of running on my own, and had me come out to Long Island. I trained with him for a couple of weeks, and he was the premier sprinter at that time. And he even told me at that clinic, he was like, if you get involved, if you train hard, he goes, you're going to be the next world record holder in the 100-meter. And, fast forward, eventually I was. But, if it really wasn't for him, I don't know that I ever would have gotten into it. So having that mentor for me was incredibly important. Did you have any mentors as you were coming up on the Paralympic scene, or maybe even outside the Paralympic scene, and maybe it's somebody in your family or your coach, or who are some of your mentors that really motivated you?
Yeah, that's very interesting, and it's very, very connected to one of my mentors. Similar story. is when I was, I don't know if you know Sam Grew. He's a high jumper on the team right now. He's my same classification, above the knee amputee. And he's the world record holder, 3-time world champion. And he won his first world championship in 2015. And I had literally that year, I high jumped with him at Desert Challenge. Like, I didn't really take it seriously. I was having a good time, but I high jumped with him. We became like friends. Him and my dad, they hit it off. And then fast forward to 2016, 2017, we became very close because I was looking up to him and I was asking him for advice and sending him videos and calling him so much. And he was probably some annoying 11-year-old kid calling a, 18-year-old asking for high jump advice. But then ultimately he told me, he was like, we'll be in Tokyo together. I guarantee you. And I was like, oh my God, like I can do this. I can make this. And so he's been this mentor, this older brother, almost like family at this point for me throughout this whole journey. And then we qualified together. We both made the team at trials. We both jumped the standard. Now we're both going to Tokyo. In Peru at the Pan American Games in 2019, he got gold, I got silver. And I was 14 right at the time. So like we have this amazing bond, and hopefully we take it to Tokyo, and hopefully we become the first 2 US high jumpers ever to go 1-2 at any Paralympics, Olympics. No high jumpers have ever gone 1-2 before. So hopefully we can make that a reality and become the first to ever do it. But that he's like a brother to me. And so I would say he is my mentor within the community, similar to what those guys did for you.
Wow, that's amazing. That really would be special if you guys went in there and took those top 2 spots. The only question is who's getting number 1, right?
Listen. I would love to come out there and get a gold medal. He jumps way higher than me. He's the world record. I'm not kidding myself. I'm happy he wins. Let me get my silver and then give it a few years and we can reassess and see where it goes. Maybe in Paris I can overtake him, but as of right now, let him get the gold. Let him take it, because not even let him, he will get it regardless. But in Rio, he got silver, and so he really wants that gold. I know it. So he can have the gold. I'm not going to be too concerned about that. I'll fight for that silver spot behind him, and then we can both celebrate.
Well, and like I said before, Ezra, you're 16, and I'm sure you probably know this, but most track athletes, they don't physically peak until their mid-20s.
Yeah, I know.
8 years away from even peaking as a track athlete.
It's true. It's cool. I get to compete against these grown men, and then it makes it even cooler when I beat them, because it's like such an ego crush for these guys to be like beaten by a 16-year-old.
And talking about training and preparation, because that's one thing I want to dive into a little bit, and really in the context of this is such an unprecedented year for the Paralympics in so many different ways. I mean, obviously we're dealing with COVID. We're seeing that now play out with the Olympic athletes who are competing right now. A lot of athletes who trained for 5 years and then all of a sudden they don't get to compete because they tested positive for COVID. It added an additional year. And I know that for me, when I was preparing for Paralympic Games, it's completely different. Every year we have world championships and national championships like you talked about before. But preparing for a Paralympic year is very different. It's a lot more, at least it was for me, it was a lot more intense, a lot more focused. One of the things that's really difficult for any track athlete to do is to peak right at that moment of your rounds and your finals for you in the high jump. Are you competing in anything else besides the high jump, or are you just focusing on the high jump?
I'm also doing the 100 meter and the long jump. So I'll be doing those 3. That's like, those are the 3 events that I do. But high jump is the event where I am the highest chance of medaling and really making a dent. So that's where majority of the focus is going, but I do the other ones as well.
Well, so then that's another element of that you're going to have to deal with there is you've got 3 different events. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a long schedule. So walk us through a little bit. You talked about in the beginning you didn't have a coach and now you have a coach. Walk us through a little bit about how you two have been planning this and how you've been trying to prepare to, because you have to kind of peak for the trials, right? And then you have to turn around, let your body recover, and then come back and do it again and try to peak even better for that big moment when you're on the world stage of the Paralympics. Yeah,
for sure. And, as a 16-year-old, I'm already this huge underdog in a sense where like these guys have done this way longer than me. They know more. They've done it more. It's muscle memory for them. And I've been high jumping competitively for a while, but the other 2 events, I literally just started this year taking them seriously. I haven't trained for the 100 meter until this year. I haven't trained for the long jump till this year. So I've had 7 months, 8 months of training at a track, because at the beginning of the pandemic, I couldn't even use any track or any facility. So I haven't had much form training in these other events until this year. And it's so tough. It's so tough to balance 3 events that are nothing alike. Very few high jumpers do long jump, and very few of the long jumpers, who sprint, very few of them do high jump. Those are 2 different body types, 2 different. So it's a lot of mental work that I've had to figure out, changing the mindset in between each event and not switching them too much in between practice, not flopping back and forth too much. It's tough to find that balance. But as far as training goes and peaking is, I did my high school track season. I trained for my high school track season, and CIF championships was a week before trials was. So we had sort of a line, not as huge of a peak. We weren't trying to go out and jump some crazy, something crazy, and then have to come back and do it again. It was more like we're going to almost train through it. Like we're going to train through trials. I felt confident enough that regardless of what the training was, regardless of when we were peaking, I would still jump enough to make the team. And so we almost thought of it as like tunnel vision past trials. We have to perform, but we were training through it, training past it. And so I ended up, even peaking a little bit near the trials and having a great day. And it was awesome. But then we got right back to training. And then the past month or so has been pretty intense pounding and load on my body and pushing my body to the limits. I'm always tired. We're doing 2-a-days. It's pretty heavy training. And yesterday was actually our last 2-a-day before Tokyo. So as we get closer to August and middle of August, and when I leave, as we get closer to that, we start to ease up and go back to our 1-a-day training that we had during the majority of the season. So we go back to 1 training a day, the certain amount of rest days, getting more time for my body to recover, not as pounding, not as crazy intense, still training hard and keeping fresh and working hard, but not the same intensity as the 2-a-days were. I mean, yesterday I was at the track in the morning 2 hours, and then for almost 5 hours in the afternoon. So almost 7 hours I spent at the track, like intense training the whole time. So it's tough to be able to, I can't be doing that closer to Tokyo. So we'll start to ease up. We'll start to taper. We'll start to prepare myself, feel a little bit more fresh in the body, so that by the time Tokyo rolls around, I have a pretty brutal schedule in Tokyo. I have 4 days of back-to-back competition, long jump final, 100 meter prelim, 100 meter final, and then high jump is last. So I got to condition my body to be able to handle those days and then come back on the final day when I'm tired, when I'm dead, when I don't feel it, and high jump like I've never jumped before if I want to get a medal. So it's been a tough road, and it's definitely difficult, but I'm enjoying every second of it. So
well, coming from somebody who can definitely relate to that, to those crammed schedules at the time, make sure you get done with those trainings and those events and go jump in the ice bath for a good 15, 20 minutes. Rest.
Do they have ice bath? I ice bath so often. It's like I have to take an ice bath to feel fresh. But I don't know if they're going to have it in Tokyo. I've heard they might not. I heard they might have ice bath. Do they usually have ice baths at the Paralympics where or even just a bathtub?
And you know what? If they don't, just tell your coaches to go out and buy the big industrial drums that they sometimes, transport stuff in, liquids. Fill it with water and ice, and you could even sit in that if they don't have the ice baths for you.
Yeah, so there'll be ways around it. You think I'll be able to figure it out and use some sort of ice bath?
Provide that for you.
Cool.
I would be surprised if they didn't have it, but yeah. So that's incredible, Ezra. And I would just my recommendation to you would be that there's a lot of stress and there can be a lot of stress around the Paralympics. You've worked this time not 4 years but 5 years.
5, yeah.
We talked about Do you feel like that extra year was good for you, or does it just make the anxiety even kind of greater to I got to wait another year, I'm just ready to go? How did you deal with that year's delay with the pandemic going into these games?
That extra year was amazing. The best thing that could have happened to me. Obviously, when I found out about it, I was pissed. I was like, are you kidding me? I have to wait another year, all this stuff, right? But I feel so much more prepared now. The goal in 2020 was just to make the team. That was the goal. Then we got an extra year. That goal shifted, and I said, nope, I'm medaling now. I got a medal. And so then once given that extra year, we made insane improvements in all of my events, like astronomical compared to what I was jumping before and what I was doing beforehand. So that year gave me this, and we trained the whole year. We literally, right when we found out that Tokyo was postponed, the next day we went to the park and we're training. We trained from then all the way into this season, all the way through this season. We literally didn't stop training. And I heard someone on the team say it. They said, we'll find out in Tokyo who trained through the pandemic, who really put in the time during this year off that we had. And granted, there's many different circumstances. Some people didn't have access to a training facility like I did. I didn't even have access to a weight room or a track or anything. I was training at the park, on my street, in my backyard. Like, we made it work, but it really will show who has put in the time through this year off to make those leaps and make those bounds and obviously come out even better. So that year for me, especially, I grew like 3 inches in that year. So definitely a positive for sure.
That's incredible. Before I turn it back over here to Aaron, again, I just want to say congratulations. You know, this is, again, your first Paralympics is probably going to be one. I mean, if you look at your age, you could very well do 5 of these things.
Yep.
And so I think Aaron and I are going to be able to come back, you know, some Paralympics in the future and go, we knew this kid would win. The superstar.
I hope so. Thank you.
So just, you know, again, your first one, just enjoy it. Just, you know, walk in with that team. I know it's a little different. The fans won't be there, but that shouldn't really affect just how special your first Paralympics is. So my advice, you just go in there. You're already prepared. You're ready to go. Do what you're trained to do and just enjoy the whole experience.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I think I pulled the muscle just listening to you guys talking about competing in Paralympics and things like that. But I just saw a note earlier. If anybody has questions, we're going to open it up to questions here shortly. Just type it in the comment section. If you don't have questions, certainly wish Ezra the best of luck in that comment section. But something playing off of what Brian just said about an athlete peaking around 25, 26 years of age. There's something going on, and I don't want to deviate from the focus on Tokyo, but there's something pretty cool happening in your backyard in 2028 that you've been a big part of.
Yeah, the Paralympics and Olympics are coming to LA in 2028. So that's like, my sights are set on Tokyo, but we say it all the time. My career is going to be like this long staircase. Tokyo's the first step. Literally the first step. I have planned to do much bigger things in Paris, in LA. Tokyo is the stepping stone to this level of competition, this level of becoming a Paralympic medalist. It will all come together in LA in my backyard. That's like going to be like the accumulation of my career, like the peak, the moment, my family in the stands, backyard, at the Coliseum, hometown, home city. That's where it's all going to go down. I will say this right now, I will plan on breaking a world record in each of my events at LA and a gold medal. 3 events, 3 golds, 3 world records, the hat trick. I'm telling you right now, that's what's going to happen in LA in 2028. Wow,
you heard it here on Ask Aaron. You know, we're going to have to save this and
Ezra, that gives me goosebumps just listening to that. It gets those competitive juices. It makes me want to come out of retirement, but then I realize I'd have to go and compete in like the senior games or something. So.
All right. Well, anything else you guys want to share? We're gonna jump into some questions if we have some questions. Kayla or Mason. From Becca, how do you feel about the added interest in Paralympics regarding commercials such as Toyota?
Thank you, Becca. It's a good question. I don't know about you guys, but it's pretty awesome to see the rise of the Paralympics and the interest from brands, from sponsors, from TV. I mean, what did we get? We got 1,200 hours of coverage from NBC, thanks to help from Toyota and lots of the other Paralympic sponsors. We had 70 in Rio, and we had 2 hours in London. Like, the Paralympics is on this exponential rise, and I feel like I'm so blessed to be put in the movement at this time where it's, growing so rapidly, and hopefully help that growth even more. But man, I am very excited, and it's very special to see big brands like Toyota get involved in the way that they have.
It is very cool and great answer. It is an exciting time and motivating as heck. And you just can't imagine what it's going to be like in in LA. And
Exactly.
Yeah, so very, very cool. But we're not thinking about LA. We're thinking about Tokyo. What's the next question? Any other questions? Here we go. From Melissa, is it expensive to participate in events like the Endeavor Games? Good question for all the.
Yeah, that's a good question. The actual fee to compete, not super expensive. I don't even know, some events don't even have a fee, like Angel City Games. We don't even have a competition fee. It's all free sports. Where the difficulty comes in is travel and paying for, your hotel, food, getting a flight over depending on where you live. And so, even at the Angel City Games, we had lots of grants to fly athletes out and fly people out who wouldn't have been able to make it otherwise. I don't know if Endeavor has something like that, but the expensive part is even just getting the equipment, flying out, and the other logistics. The actual fee for competition is not very expensive. Usually it's like $20 at most sometimes.
Yeah, that's great. And that is such a neat offering from Angel City Games, is the grants that you and your partners provide to athletes that need some assistance. Just like no barriers. Just if you want to go, you can make it happen.
No barriers, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we have time for another question. From Amy. Hey, Ezra, how have sports shaped your approach to all aspects of your life?
Thank you for the question, Amy. Sports has changed my life in so many ways. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but it gave me this confidence. It gave me this place where I felt like I belong. Because as a kid with a disability, and I'm sure Aaron and I'm sure Brian can relate to this. Everywhere you go, people are staring at you. There's people pointing fingers and whispering and and as a kid growing up like that, it hurt, and it hurt me. I didn't feel like I belong. I'm at the mall. I'm at the basketball court. I feel like an outsider everywhere I go. And so sports gave me this place where I felt like I was just one of the guys. I felt like I was just another guy on the team. I wasn't thinking about my disability. I wasn't thinking about the fact that I was the only kid in my school with one leg. I was just playing the game. And I was known as the basketball player, not the kid with a disability. And so sports allowed me to have that sort of meditative place where I could go, where I wasn't underestimated when I was playing, because I was playing against able-bodied kids and having a good time and doing my thing. It sort of took disability out of the equation for a second and made me feel that sense of normalcy where I wasn't an outsider. I belonged here. And so once I had that, and, as well, we know what it does for you physically, psychologically, what it does for your soul. Sports is one of the most amazing things in the world. But for me personally, it helped me build confidence and find a place where I belong, to do something around my friends, around people who I sort of felt like one of the guys. I didn't feel like this outsider who was always stared at all the time. So.
Awesome. Very good. Well, I think that's it for this conversation, but it feel like it's just really starting up. I think you're picking up a lot of people from Ottobock and individuals watching this today, and you're just your rooting section has grown tremendously. We can't wait to track you through Tokyo and beyond. And
thank you.
We certainly will be cheering you on, and we'll be in touch. You know how to get a hold of us for support, and also as well in Tokyo with our support team there. So Ottobock's backing you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Team Ottobock, baby. Let's go.
Let's do it. What's that, Brian?
I said, go get him, Ezra.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time today. Greet the family.
Of course. You too.
All right. We'll see you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.